So good evening, and thank you, Philip, and the whole community for inviting me. I'm Maarten Lambrechts. I work at Mediafin, the publisher of Flemish newspaper De Tijd and Balloon newspaper L'Echo. I work there as a data and multimedia journalist, so I work a lot with data, not with big data, so don't expect to see any big data in my presentation. This is actually very small data. But I want to show to you an interactive graphic I made that shows how the climate in Belgium is getting warmer, and also give a little background of how I came up with the idea and where I got the data, how I get the data, and we also will be discussing a little bit about the design of the graphic and the interactivity. So first, I would like to show you the graphic, because I think a lot of you haven't seen it yet. It's really a simple graphic, just line charts. But as you see at the top, there are some navigation buttons. So with these buttons, you can walk through the story that this graphic is telling. So I'll just walk through the graphic with you. And the first step explains a little what you're seeing. So basically, every line on this chart represents 1 year, and there are 183 lines on the chart. So for every year since the observations, the meteorological observations in Belgium started, and the black line you see is the average. So it connects all the average temperatures for every month since January 1833. In the next step, we'll see the year 2014, which was the hottest year since observations began. Actually, I developed this chart last year, so this year I just made an update for 2015, and that's why 2014, yeah, it's still the hottest year on record, so that's why I included this step also. In the next step, we move 1 year further, so last year, which wasn't the hottest year on record, it was the fifth hottest year on record. But as you can see, in the month of December, which is on the right there, December was much hotter than all the other Decembers from the past years. And that made it the fifth hottest year on record. The next step highlights the 10 last years, and as you can see, it's very rare that the average temperature during a month goes below the historical average. So last 10 years were actually quite hot. Now we see the averages of the last 40 years divided into decades. And you see the line moving up. So during the last decades, the 10-year averages also went up. And then we see when, for every month of the year, when were the hottest months, in which year the records were set. And actually, 2015, as I mentioned, was the hottest month of December, broke the record of, I think, 1934. So now all the hottest months, the average hottest months, all the records were set after 1990. In the next step is the other way around. Now we're looking at the coldest months on record. And as you can see, I think this is the most recent one for February. This was set in 1956. So no cold records was set in the last 60 years. And to sum up, a prediction for 2016, which is actually quite it's not difficult to tell that this year will also be quite hot. So a little animation sums up the graphic. So I published this last year, and I did an update at the beginning of this year. And I would like to talk first how I came to the idea of making this graphic. Well, every year and also every month, the Royal Meteorological Institute makes a summary of the past month or of the past year to to communicate if it was a hot year or a hot month, cold month. They have numbers on precipitation. They have numbers on the hours of sunshine we got. And in this summary, there was one graphic, which is this one. And that was, I'm sorry, I closed. Oh, that's too much. So this graphic was the initial idea, but it has some problems, this graphic. Mainly it is trying to tell a lot of stories at the same time. So you have the historical average, you have the last year, those are the two lines. Then you have some indication of the distribution, and you also have the record years. This is a bit too busy. I'm not mentioning the colors here and the fonts and things like that. It's a good graphic because it has a lot of data in it. But as a journalist, if you want to tell a story, you have to take those messages apart to have a nice story to tell. You can't put all the messages you want to try in one graphic. So I separated all these messages in different steps. And that's how I came to the idea of a stepped interactive graphic. First, of course, I needed the data. They're not on the website of the Royal Meteorological Institute. I'll show you what you can find there. I'm sorry, this is in Dutch because they also have an English page, but what I want to show you is only Dutch and in French. So I went there. I went to products and services, and I thought, that I just could download the data there. But the Royal Meteorological Institute doesn't have an open data policy. I hope this will change soon. But I have a wizard to let you choose what kind of customer you are and what data you're interested in. So I selected a profile as a weather amateur or a hobbyist. A product, I wanted the observations from Ukkel, where the most used weather station is. And this looks all very good, so I wanted mean temperatures. If they were daily, I could extract the monthly averages. And then I had to select the media. And then that's where it went wrong. So the only medium you can select is by fax. Obviously, that wasn't a choice. And then if I went further, you can see here, it costs more than 500 euros per year to get daily observations from Ukkel. So I had to try something else. And I went looking for the website to see if there was, I don't know, some kind of hidden API they're using internally, or some hidden files somewhere I could scrape. But before that, I remembered a good lesson I learned as a data journalist. And that's before you're setting up some scraper or whatever you do, just ask politely if you can get the data. So I went to the section of the website with all the contact information and sent them a polite email just asking, can I have those monthly averages in a nice format I can work with to make an interactive graphic. They obviously didn't understand my question. I don't think they get a lot of questions like that. So someone sent my mail through saying just send in the graphic, that would be the easiest thing to do. So I got the graphic, not the graphic I was interested in. Those are yearly averages, so yeah, I couldn't do anything with that. So I sent another polite email explaining a little more in detail what I was interested in. And then, without any problems, they sent me an Excel file, and I was finally where I wanted to be. I had a nice, clean Excel file with one observation per month for every month since January 1833. I also had averages for winter, spring, summer, autumn, and also yearly averages. I threw those away because I wasn't interested in them, and I ended up with a nice base file to work with. For the updates of 2015, I just went for the monthly summaries. I just went to those pages. You can see they go all the way back to, I think, 2006. So those are on the website. If you want to go beyond 2006, they're not online. So yeah, that's everything for the data. Some words on technology. I think you are using technology much more advanced than I will ever will on a daily basis. So it's, I don't think it's too complicated for you. I had a New Year's resolution last year to learn some R for the newsroom. And I used this data for doing my first exercises in R. For those who can read this code, this is some code to unpivot the data. So you saw the data structure. You had one column for every month. I wanted one column year, one column month, and one column observation, so only three columns. And actually, doing that in Excel is quite hard. You can do it with some dirty hacks, but unpivot data in Excel is hard. So I went for R, and with a little package, you can see over there, the Reshape2 package, it was really, really easy to do. So then I had my final data to work with, and I could finally begin to work on the graphics and on the interactivity. And for that, I had a little experience, graphic I made a couple of years ago. This shows Human Development Index for all the countries in the world from, I think, 1980 up until 2012 or 2013, I can't remember, 2012 it is. And the structure is basically the same. You have a lot of lines. You can move over them. And you can also select regions, for example. You see European countries are on top. They are the most developed. Africa is at the bottom, as you would expect. So this was one of my first interactive graphics I made. And I didn't start from scratch. I used this graphic as a base. So you see the code I used for my interactive graphic goes back already a long time. But making interactive graphics and coding, I think most of you know, you almost never start from scratch. You take some example you find, or you build on what you've built before. So yeah, that's the way it goes. So these things are built with D3.js. I don't know how many of you know D3. How many of you made some things with D3? Okay, quite a lot. So it's a JavaScript library where you can make interactive graphics online. It's basically the standard for data visualization and interactive graphics online. Also, you can make maps with it. It's really versatile. And what D3 has, it has some basic functions for loading data. And what it does for you is it can make scales. So for example, the temperature scale is basically telling D3, take the minimum and maximum value you find in the data and map that range to those pixels on screen. That is what D3 does. It has some data restructuring functions. If you want your data to be nested differently or things like that, D3 can do that for you. It calculates the lines and draws them on screen. And you can use different interpolation algorithms. So as you noticed, there are only 12 points per year on the graphic, but the graphic is nice and smooth. So if you don't use an interpolation, or you just use linear interpolation, you get straight lines, and the graphic doesn't look that good. So now we have curved lines, but the lines go through each point of every year. So basically, D3 then draws the lines on screen, and I also made it draw invisible lines for highlighting. I didn't. Yeah, the graphic is gone for the moment, but when you hover over the graphic, you can highlight lines and you see which year the line represents. What D3 didn't do for me is animating the line, so you had a moving line, moving from left to right. I had to use actually a hack for that, because D3 doesn't animate lines. So it's possible, but yeah, it's a bit of hacking. And obviously I had to write all the functions for every step to tell the browser what to do for each step, what to show, what not to show, to update the text, move the things around. So my piece was quite inspirational, apparently. This is a graphic from Deed Site. So they had, in the beginning of this year, an article explaining how Germany was heating up. So you have some graphics, and then also the step graphic. So they politely mentioned me on Twitter, saying that they had their inspiration from me, and I don't mind. It's actually an honor that they use my code. There's this one from Volkskrant, if I'm not mistaken. So they had also a lot of interactive graphics on climate change, and one of these things, I think it's number 6, is a variation on my chart. So they choose to show one line at every flash. So it takes quite a long time to go through the whole animation, but in the meantime you can read the text, but also they politely send me an email asking for my permission to make a graphic like that.
Is that common practice within your work area?
Yeah, it's considered unpolite if you just take some example and do with it what you want. But I guess legally you can do that if you plug in other data, if you write other copy, then you're not plagiarizing. So, but of course it's politer to give credits. Yeah. Most of them do that. Another one from Switzerland, published some days ago. Also same story. And also some people mentioning on Twitter that they had some inspiration to make some graphic. This one is actually a bit different. It takes the basic idea of using lines for representing years and highlighting some of the most recent years. You see America is getting warmer as well. But as you notice here, it's not using the real temperature, but the temperature anomaly. So they take a reference year or reference period and calculate the differences for each year. And also the lines are not curved, they're straight. So to sum up, what do I think makes this a good graphic? And there are some reasons for which I made the graphic like it is. The first one is the steps. As I explained, the graphic from the Royal Meteorological Institute was too busy to contain too much information at once, and there were too many things going on in the graphic. So I separated these out. And with the steps, you can really tell a story. You have a beginning where you set the stage, then you highlight different things, and in the end, you sum up. That's the basics of storytelling. The steps also make it lighter. In every graphic, in every step, there's only highlighted one thing. For example, the monthly records or the past year. So the reader knows where he needs to look. There's no distraction. And also the steps make it playful. If you go through the animation, you're triggered. So you wonder what comes next. What is he going to highlight more? So steps is it's related to a bit to gamification. You make a story and you make the reader want to go through the whole process. The steps are also a progress indicator. So if he is at step 8, he knows that there's only one more. So that's also a good practice. Something that is a bit underused is the linking between text and graphics. I think this combination is really, really powerful. If you can explain something in text and at the same time show the reader what you mean, and then make them play together, for example, highlighting some things in the text, and when the user clicks it or hovers over, you see something on the graphic. I think this is really, really powerful. It's something I really believe in. So text linked to graphics just gives you the power to explain things really clearly. For normal non-expert readers, it's very important to use units they can relate to. The last graphic showed the anomaly, or the difference between what you would normally expect. But a lot of people don't know what is meant by that. So I decided to use just the temperature in degrees Celsius, and everybody can relate to that because everybody knows that 0 is cold and that 25 is nice and warm. I made a clean and smooth graphic, so no chart chunk, and by chart chunk I mean everything that's not necessary to communicate the data. I just left it out. There's not even a line for the scales. They're just numbers if you take a closer look, and everything is in grayscale except the things that are highlighted in red. So it's really minimalistic, designed to guide the user's attention to what you really want to tell. Almost no color, so there is only a little bit of red in each step to guide the eyes of the user. And I use rounded curves because they're nicer to look at. And well, if you use daily temperatures, you would see there would be a lot of wiggles. Now it's only monthly averages, and you get nice rounded curves. What also speaks to the imagination is that I used the whole data set. So from the beginning of the observations in 1833, and if you can say this graphic contains all the months we know the temperature of for Belgium, and that triggers people. They want to see how much do we know, and how did we do last year? And of course the topic, the weather, is familiar to everyone. Everybody in Belgium knows that the last December was really crazy. It's experienced by everyone every day. And also the climate is a hot topic. It's a lot in the news. It's also the reason why we're here. So that's also obviously things that make the graphic attract readers. So that basically is it. This is my website, also my Twitter account, and you can see some of the work we produced at Mediafin at those Twitter accounts and at that website. I don't know if there are any questions.
Maybe just a question about how much time it took you from the initial idea to when it was ready.
If you notice the date on the email I sent, it was like the 22nd and 23rd of December of 2014, so just before Christmas. I got the data, and then during Christmas holidays I worked on it in the evenings at night, and then it was ready, I think, at the beginning of 2015. So I had some code to work with. The data is not complicated. It's not big data. So I think maybe altogether 2 days, something like that.
Excellent work. But at that time you had already the idea of how you would visualize this. It was only...
No, I always started sketching. I had the idea of the initial graphic I showed, but then it was, I wanted to make something in steps. Now it's fashion to make scrollers that the user can scroll. But it's a little bit complicated, and I just wanted something clean, straightforward. So I had to decide on how to develop the steps. And then basically you redesign while you're working. You make something, you think I make it that way, then you see it on screen and you think, well, it doesn't actually work, and you try something else. It's not that I designed it from zero to the last part, first in Illustrator, so to speak, and then translated it to the web. It's just you go and you see what works and you see what doesn't work.
Excellent. Well, we have time for one question. Ishvan, it will not be your question, it will be the last question.
So I didn't know D3, but it looks appealing. I wonder if you can integrate D3 with scripting languages like Python or R or things like that.
Not that I know of. I know there are some platforms that take code from Python and translate it ultimately into interactive graphics in D3, like IPython notebooks. I think it uses D3 as well. But it's purely JavaScript library. I don't know many integrations between the two.
Mathieu, you want to add something?
I have looked quite a lot into this, and there's no easy out-of-the-box tool that does this. I mean, there are some things that works partially, but yeah.
But there are wrappers in R, like R charts, for example. You can define a D3 chart, so it shouldn't be a real problem.
Okay. Yes. Well, let's wrap up this presentation then. Thank you all for the inspiration.
Thank you.
Hey, I hope you liked this presentation. This presentation was held in the Brussels Data Science Community Meetup. If you want to know more of when these meetups are taking place, just check the link below. Bye-bye.